The metal gleamed like a promise you could hold. A soldier's fist closed on his wages. A merchant weighed a coin and saw a king's face pressed into it. A small sun that would light the next deal, the next voyage, the next season. But metal is slow. Armies move faster than minds. Empires want more than geology can give. So power learned a trick. Make tomorrow, pay for today. Take the weight out of the hand and put the promise in a book. Gold was glory, debt was reach. And in time, reach replaced glory. On the western edge of Anatolia, where the Pactolus River rifled grains of electrum from the earth, city-states hammered the first true coins. Lydia's mints branded rough wealth with a sovereign's guarantee. Persia perfected the idea with the derrick, a disciplined gold standard that marched alongside royal couriers and the great king's tax collectors. Coinage did something older money couldn't. It synchronized strangers. A stamped disc turned barley, fish, wool, and wine into a language you could count. Armies fed, contractors paid, tribute standardized. But the aura of metal hid a fragile truth. The stamp gave the coin legitimacy, but the budget gave it purpose. When the purpose outran the minds, rulers looked for a second tool. Rome found it. At first, gold and silver were empire made solid. Sacks to pay legions, ransom to quiet enemies, gifts to tether allies. As conquest slowed and the frontier hardened, costs climbed and coin thinned. Nero took a little silver out, others took more. The denarius, once crisp and credible, became a mirror that remembered who it had been. The state learned to manufacture metal by policy. Debasement was a press release in alloy. Crises rippled. The credit seizure in 33 CE, a panic of confidence. The 3rd century storm when pay, taxes, and supply broke their rhythm. Edicts and purity stamps tried to command belief, while reality tugged at the sleeve. Metal, the god of scarcity, was revealed as political clay. When coins failed, paperwork didn't. In medieval Europe, the economy discovered a second set of lungs. Taxes were tallied on split sticks, the halves matching like a marriage. Fairs at Champagne settled debts among merchants who never touched the same coins. Bills of exchange turned distance into ink, allowing a trader to sell in Bruges and settle in Pisa with a letter that crossed mountains without a mule. Scarcity of bullion did not stop trade because trust learned to travel in ledgers. A tally was as good as a king if sheriffs honored it. A bill was as good as silver if the distant house stood when you knocked. Metal remained on the stage, but the script was now written in books. Italian city-states discovered how to extend the play. Venice and Florence normalized public debt, Monte, selling shares in the city's future and paying interest from taxes. Citizens became creditors of their own government. Prudence was patriotism with a coupon. Double-entry bookkeeping, codified at century's end, gave finance a conscience. Every debit had a witness, every credit its counterweight. Armed with method, the republics learned to shift power from the vault to the balance sheet. Wars could be financed without looting a temple. Ports could be deepened, fleets refitted, canals cut, funded not by sacking a rival but by selling a future that needed to arrive on time. The strange alchemy of organized borrowing appeared, credibility as collateral. Further north, a small, swampy republic engineered credibility into an institution. Amsterdam's Whistlebank opened in 1609 and accepted only good coin at strict valuations, settling large payments in the chill sobriety of ledger money. It didn't pay interest. It didn't chase risk. By refusing the temptations that ruined bankers, it became the yardstick that measured everyone else. Around it, the Dutch stock market bloomed, and the VOC sprawled across oceans, fusing equity with state privilege. The Netherlands proved a hard lesson. Where clearing is clean, power compounds. A neutral book is heavier than any chest of bullion because it lets strangers transact without suspicion. The wealth was not in the coin, it was in the clearing of doubt. Across the Channel, England watched and learned, then did something bigger. After the Crown's seizure of bullion taught goldsmiths to distrust royal hands, they evolved into deposit bankers whose receipts traded as money. In 1694, the Bank of England joined Parliament, taxpayers, and bondholders into a machine. War with France could be financed in weeks, not years. Consuls later turned the nation's promises into a perpetual instrument so predictable that widows could price their grief against it. Here was the pivot. Debt became power because debt, when taxed and represented honestly, could be scaled. A fleet is built on oak. An empire is built on coupons. A nation that could service interest reliably could project force beyond its mines, beyond its fields, beyond its borders. A young republic made the principle its foundation stone. Alexander Hamilton proposed that the United States assume state debts, fund them at par, and anchor everything to customs revenue in a national bank. Credit rose where chaos had lived. Later in the Civil War, the Union printed greenbacks and sold bonds on a scale unthinkable for a government barely older than its oldest soldiers. It worked not because paper is magic, but because paper was paired with taxes, victory, and the will to retire or restrain issuance when peace returned. The new country learned an old rule. Fiat divorced from discipline is theater. Fiat married to a functioning polity is a bridge. France tried shortcuts and paid in smoke. In 1789, revolutionaries printed assignats backed by church lands and ideals. At first, receipts for confiscated property acted like a moral currency, liberty with collateral. But the presses learned a rhythm faster than auctions. Bread rose, savings thinned, and the market punished rhetoric with prices. The Banque de France, founded in 1800, restored order in the new century by centralizing credit and imposing rules. Napoleon's armies marched on reorganization as much as on iron. The lesson bit into Europe's memory. Debt can replace gold as power only when it respects arithmetic. A balance sheet can mobilize a continent, and it can also set it on fire. The 20th century shattered the idol in public. In August 1914, governments suspended gold and issued debt and conscripted credit as they conscripted men. Trenches were funded by bills and bonds, not treasure fleets. After the carnage, countries tried to put the clock back. Pegs were restored on brittle terms, and the strain snapped first in the weak. Britain abandoned gold in 1931. In 1933, the United States voided gold clauses and brought bullion under state control. A new hierarchy emerged. The sovereign's ability to tax and borrow, its power over balance sheets, mattered more than the metal in its vault. During the next war, that hierarchy turned total. Economies became command systems of coupons and quotas, bond drives and ration books, all underwritten by debt that would be serviced in the decades peace purchased. At Bretton Woods in 1944, a compromise tried to harness both worlds. The dollar would be good for gold to foreign central banks. Other currencies would be good for dollars. Stability would be good for Reconstruction. For a generation, trade expanded under those rules. But commitments multiplied, deficits widened, and foreign claims on America's gold piled up. In 1971, the link was cut. The world entered the age of quantities, where money was openly political again, and the anchor was institutional restraint, not a mineral. From then on, power traveled through interest rates, swap lines, and the willingness of investors to hold a country's IOUs. Metal still mattered, in rings, in vaults, in culture, but it no longer measured empires. Debt did. Then came the stress tests that turned theory into policy. In 2008, the financial system choked on its own bravado. Private debts were too large, too entangled, too imaginary. Central banks expanded their balance sheets, took bad assets onto public shoulders, and shoved liquidity into clogged arteries. Bread did not spike the way textbooks predicted. Assets did. The new printing did not spray cash across markets. It changed gravity. Homes levitated. Stocks floated. The rescue saved the patient and complicated the diagnosis. When debt replaces gold as power, rescue becomes a muscle memory, and the line between stabilization and distortion blurs. During a pandemic, the hoses opened wider. Direct support to households and firms, emergency lending, bought time. Later, prices remembered what quantities can do, and citizens relearned how quickly a shopping basket can become a lesson. Pull back, and the pattern is embarrassingly human. Gold promised purity but delivered inertia. Debt promised flexibility but invited ambition. Scarcity keeps us honest until it keeps us small. Promises let us build bridges we could never carry in sacks, then tempt us to pave deserts we have no reason to cross. The move, from metal to ledger, did not abolish discipline. It relocated it, from the mind to the ministry, from the vein in the earth to the vein of trust. The empire of IOUs is stable when its institutions are boring and its storytellers modest. It is fragile when its budgets are theater and its guardians become the protagonists. Listen to the language. A bond matures. A nation rolls debt. The future is personified because we have hired it. We borrow its labor to solve today's problem, promising wages later. That contract requires growth, taxes, and law. When any one of those fails, the bond turns from citizen to accuser. People sometimes dream of returning to gold, a world of hard things and harder limits. But Rome debased metal. Spain inflated with silver. Gold is not a saint. It is a mirror. It reflects the character of those who hold it. Debt is not a villain. It is a tool. It reflects the honesty of those who issue it. What replaces gold, finally, is not debt alone, but administered belief. A central bank's sentence can move more value in an afternoon than a mine can yield in a year. A parliament's budget can lift or break a generation. A treaty can turn risk into routine. But administered belief is not free. It demands that the administrators be legible, that the costs be owned in the present, that benefits not always be pulled from the unconsenting future. That is the hard math that ancient coins and modern screens both refuse to do for us. So the coins look the same. The value didn't. The bonds look the same. The risk didn't. The screens glow with a comfort that feels like certainty until a tremor shows you what you were really holding. Not metal, not paper, but an arrangement of faith. When debt replaced gold as power, we traded weight for velocity, purity for planning, a chest for a chart. It was a brilliant trade. It made bridges, vaccines, satellites, symphonies. It also made bubbles, crises, and the recurring temptation to confuse balance sheets with reality. The closing truth is not a sermon against debt or a hymn to bullion. It is a warning about memory. The system works when memory is institutional. When we remember how to tax fairly, borrow prudently, spend transparently, and fail specifically rather than universally. It breaks when memory is personal and short, when the only people who recall the last fire are the ones who retired last year. Debt replaced gold as power because it outperformed metal at organizing human effort across time. It will remain power for as long as the stories behind it remain honest enough to be believed and limited enough to be borne. History doesn't repeat, but it keeps the receipts. Ignore them, and they will be presented with interest